Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our September fireside chat. Tonight, or this evening, it's not even tonight yet, this evening we're delighted to have Lesley Eccles, all the way from New York, who is the CEO for Relish, and most people from Scotland will know her from her days at FanDuel here in Edinburgh. And we've also got Paul Atkinson as well, who's going to do the Q&A tonight. So I'm just going to hand over to both of them. Thank you. Paul, you're on mute.
Thanks, Jude. Hey, Lesley, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Paul. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, brilliant. How's Manhattan? How's New York? What's going on?
Yeah, good. So I moved here about 4 years ago, literally 3 months before Trump was voted in, which was interesting times. And yeah, I would say we are in this strange situation where we're actually in the suburbs just outside Manhattan. And we're watching as New York City goes through this period of adjusting to the coronavirus. And they're seeing a big shift in terms of people are leaving the city in spades. And they're leaving behind a city which is incredibly, significantly much more dangerous and unpleasant than it was. So it's an interesting time to be here for sure, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in November, obviously with the US election coming up. Yeah.
Well, I guess we might go and talk a bit more about that. It's everyone over is intrigued by what the hell is going to happen in November. If Donald Trump loses, will he actually not? He'll not leave the White House. He'll have to be removed by the Secret Services. We'll see. Exciting. What's the new norm like for you then, Lesley? Obviously lockdown, how's that been for you where you are?
So I think, like everyone, the initial reaction was shock back in March. At the time, we were actually, our county was the epicenter of the virus for quite a while. Yeah. And, not just the biggest in America, but it was on a par with Italy and Spain, and I think we were kind of reeling for the first month. I would say there was a lot of fear and unknown and uncertainty about what this actually was. From a business perspective, I would say that our team adjusted reasonably quickly to this, change to working at home. And it's actually been really good for our team. And I'll tell you why. We have 2 different offices, one in Edinburgh and one in New York. Mm-hmm. And we also have a handful of remote workers. So this has given everyone a taste of what it feels like to work remotely and not to be in the office and not to be part of the banter. Yeah. And I think actually when you have those, when part of your office is remote, and they can feel a little left out. They can feel like they're not part of some of the, coffee chat conversations that are going on. So, I was initially worried about, will this impact productivity in a negative way? But actually, I would say we've seen the opposite, where we're pulling together. We're really operating like a high-performing team, and I've been really impressed by the team and how they've responded to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. We did a survey of my recruitment business, about 150 people, and it was literally a third. A third wanted to be back in the office, typically the younger audience who don't have an existing network and they like to socialise. About a third were happy doing hybrid, a couple of days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. And about a third were perfectly happy working at home. Mm-hmm. And we just want to continue doing that.
Yeah, I think it depends
what do you think it would be for you?
I quite like the hybrid. I like to be able to escape from the home situation. It depends on how many children you have at home and whether they're, if they're in school, that's a different story. But if they're at home the whole time, then it's tough going, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, I think for us, we were pretty well set up with all the tools that you would need for remote working anyway. We were used to Google Meets or Zoom, Slack, and Trello and all of those things that are useful whenever you're working remotely. Discovered a new tool during lockdown, which has been fantastic, called Figma. I don't know if you know it.
No. Tell us about it.
It's like, imagine an online whiteboard, and you can all just get in there and work collaboratively on your projects. And it's actually been quite transformational for us in terms of product design and inspiration and ideas and all that sort of thing.
So it'd be great for, like, if you were a creative company, which obviously your business is, it's great for ideation and.
Yes. Yes, and just more visibility amongst the team, which has been fantastic, and collaboration as well. If you're working on a whiteboard, people are sort of wandering around and they'll see what you're doing, and they're like, "Oh, let me just pitch in here." Not always a good thing, but it kind of recreates that feeling of, oh, we're all in this together, and we're all going to give us, input our own ideas into whatever we're working on.
I think it's pretty extraordinary the way some organisations and companies and people have adapted to lockdown and the working from home thing. And to my mind, by and large, the productivity has stayed pretty high. What's been keeping since it? So when did lockdown start in New York?
It was a little bit before the UK. I think it was 10th of March or so. So the first half of March. We all kind of locked down, and I would say the first few weeks was just a bit of a panic. What does this mean? What is happening here? How dangerous is it to leave the house? How are we going to run out of food? Are we going to run out of toilet roll? All those questions, and the sort of panic buying was pretty scary. And scrambling to cancel plans and figure out what this new normal looks like. But very quickly, I would say after a couple of weeks, for us in particular, the team was I would say back up to sort of full productivity. At the time, to add added complications, we were raising or closing our Series A funding. And we were actually due to sign the term sheet middle of March. Literally the day that the stock market completely tanked was the day we were due to sign our term sheet. So that threw a bit of a spanner in the works and added a lot of pressure and a few more gray hairs over March and April. But the nice thing about our product in particular, and there's a lot of products out there that are seeing more demand during this period. People are realizing the importance of their relationships. I think there's this life-affirming moment happening across the globe right now, where we're like, oh yeah, this is what matters, and it's something that I've been kind of banging my drum about for the last year or two. It's relationships that matter, and I think everybody has been spending so much time with their partners and their family that they're realizing that the quality of those relationships are really, really vital to your own happiness and your mental health. And so that's been really nice to see over the last few months as well.
Yeah, I actually think what's happened has created some really profound changes, a number of which I think will sustain. Well, I'm going to ask you, so what do you think is profound and what's going to sustain? The government seem to be in denial at the moment about these profound changes. Obviously, we're all going to be back working in our office in Canary Wharf next week, apparently. Nobody else thinks that apart from the government, by the way. But so what do you think about the profound changes over there, and what does the new normal look like for you?
Yeah, so I think we've all realized that remote work can work, and we see that from Silicon Valley. The likes of Google and Facebook are saying, do you know what, guys, you can work anywhere, and for the next year or two at least. And I think that is going to have a huge change on the tech industry in particular, where we have the tools to work remotely. We don't need to be in an office, and suddenly everybody's realizing that. And I think it will become a competitive disadvantage to force your workforce to be in an office 9 to 6 or whatever. I also think that people are embracing the flexibility that it gives you. So in my team, I'm noticing, some of the younger people on our team are saying, okay, we don't need to be in New York City. We can go and live in Colorado for 6 months, or, DC or wherever. One of our engineers has gone off to Poland. His wife's Polish. He's gone off there for 6 months. And it just gives you flexibility to live your life a different way. And I think we're all appreciating that. And, silver linings. There's a lot of downside to coronavirus, obviously, but let's find those silver linings and make the most of it while we can.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to be able to run part equity from Barbados. That's my plan.
Yeah.
It's now entirely possible as long as the broadband link works.
Exactly.
I've not told my partners that yet, by the way, just so you know.
Time zones are tricky as well. You need to think about time zones.
So if you've thought about your plan for Hello Relish before COVID and now after COVID, what have you changed, or what do you think is going to change?
We haven't changed our strategy as a result of COVID. Our vision is very much, how do we use technology to build stronger relationships? And I think that vision it's only stronger now than it was before March. And I think we're seeing that our current product is romantic relationships or intimate relationships or whatever you want to call them. And we're seeing, our vision is going beyond that relationship to all the other relationships in your life. And I think that's become more and more apparent over the last few months, that's it's a vision that we definitely are excited about. And I think, remote working, while, you will be as productive, you'll be as driven, it's not as easy to build relationships when you're talking to somebody on Zoom. It's just not quite the same. So, I think there's another opportunity there, which is, okay, what about your, relationships with your colleagues? How do you think about strengthening those relationships? And how can we use technology to help doing that?
Yeah, I guess you've got to think about, in an environment where people are going to be operating more remotely, what specific things are you going to do to keep that communication flowing? Actually, I think one of the profound changes is that all of a sudden there's no geographic boundaries as to where you might hire people from for your business.
Yes.
You could live in the Philippines, you could be anywhere,
Right.
and be working for your business.
Right.
And actually, interesting you talk about the tech firms, but actually some big financial services firms in the UK have now got to work from anywhere into the employment agreements.
Right.
Some people, unexpected people, which kind of makes me think the change of moving people out of the cities properly semi-permanent.
Yeah, we're seeing in where we live just outside Manhattan, we're seeing a surge in house prices in the suburbs, and people are anecdotally, people are buying houses sight unseen, like calling up the realtor and saying, I've seen it online, it's good to go, just, I want it. I need out of the city, which is crazy, but yeah, whatever. Yeah. And, we're seeing the same in San Francisco. San Francisco was a tough place to live before COVID. It's infinitely tougher now, and people are really questioning, why are we living here when we could live anywhere? And I know that rents have gone down by about a third in San Francisco, and I expect this is the tip of the iceberg.
So what do you think the main differences are between the US and the UK then? Obviously, you're in a kind of fairly unique position to see both sides of the pond, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are the differences, you think?
Do you mean right in regard to how we've handled the crisis, or how we operate going forward? Well,
I think probably more on the business impact, and how the businesses have responded to it, and how they're going to rebound from it. I suppose it's more the business context rather than
Yeah, well, I was interested to hear that the UK had, what was a scheme called where you could go and eat for half price on a Monday to
Yeah,
Wednesday or something.
yeah, the kind of 10 quid per head.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that was interesting. A little scary that we're encouraging people to go out and socialize, but okay. But you know, I don't see schemes like that over here. There's much less of a safety net, I would say, in the US. I think there's a big issue around, obviously, with the amount of unemployment that we are seeing at the moment. There's a big issue around healthcare being tied to your employment. So if you don't have employment,
yeah,
it's very hard to get healthcare. And that does not make for a stable environment whenever you're in the middle of a pandemic. I went for a COVID test a couple of weeks ago, and you know, I had to pay $25 for it, which, you know, that's fine. But if you're unemployed, that's not really fine. You need to know that you can go and get a test quickly. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it. And I think there's definitely just a sense of a lack of safety net in the US. You have to stand on your own 2 feet, and that's a tough environment to be in whenever unemployment is soaring.
yeah. Jude, I don't know whether is there one or two questions you want to bring up just now. I've got more questions for Lesley, so there's no shortage of things to talk about. But is there one or two? I saw 1 or 2 questions coming in that were quite interesting.
Yeah, so there's one from Julie Ashworth to say, is there digital poverty in education the same way there is here in the UK?
Digital poverty, wow. Well, what I would say is our experience of homeschooling in the last quarter of the last academic year was pretty shocking. Our kids were sent, well, our youngest was sent a Google document each day. She was 6, a Google document each day of what she had to do. And it was pretty complicated in terms of just trying to follow these instructions. You know, the teachers are doing their best, but they'd never used Google Classroom before. I know that the older children, there was no synchronous learning. It was all just, let us send you stuff to do. Now that's not engaging. So there was definitely a lack of digital skills amongst the teaching staff. I know that they've been working really hard over the summer to upskill and uptrain the teachers. And it's a huge challenge. But we're going into an academic year now where we are expecting the teachers to teach half the class in person at the same time as having the other half of the class on a Zoom call. What could possibly go wrong? You know, I think, you know, we have a system whereby we hand out Chromebooks to people who need it, which is great. Our kids are all at the state school here. But it comes down to just this lack of training for the teachers. It's an unexpected scenario that they've all been thrown into at the deep end. But they are making the most of it, but I don't know what this year is going to bring.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when you talk about teachers running classes where people effectively dialing in and people being physically there. It reminds me of trying to run board meetings when you've got 3 people dialing in, everybody else is in the room.
Yeah, and what happens?
It's
you
pretty
know
difficult.
whoever it is that's on the line, right? You're like, oh, there's somebody there. Yeah, I'd forgotten about you guys. So that's exactly what's going to happen. The people who are in the room are going to get the attention. They're going to be asking the questions. The people who are dialing in, I think, are going to be pretty checked out. So yeah, it's not ideal.
Lesley, you've been a massive supporter of the entrepreneurial community in Scotland for a lot of years in various different things, including Entrepreneurial Scotland. What advice, given your experience from where you are, what advice would you give for budding entrepreneurs today in Scotland? What would you have them think about?
So I think it very much depends on the business that you're in, obviously. If you're, and the stage that you're at, if you're already sort of up and running early stage, I think the #1 priority has to be mental health and resilience of your team. Like, we are all under an enormous amount of pressure. Entrepreneurs more than most, I would say. And that has to be always number one. How is the team feeling? Underpins their performance at all points. I think the second one is, depending on the business that you're in, obviously, preserve runway, preserve cash, extend your runway as long as you can, because this might be a short recession, but it could be, it could be quite a long time before who knows what the winter is going to bring. And number one killer of startups is running out of cash. So make sure that you know how long you have. Take venture debt if you need to, but just extend your runway as long as possible. And then I think number three is really think hard about what the world is going to look like in your industry over the next couple of years. There's so many fundamental shifts in the way that we are working and living that it will impact your business. So, for example, one of the companies that that we have a mutual board member, and they provide drink systems for in the office. So, that's not an ideal business to be in right now. So how do we think about how long are we all going to be out of the office for? Will we ever all be back in the office realistically? Should we start to pivot to think about direct to consumer instead? And another example would be what does this move to the suburbs mean for workspaces? If you have children, working at home really is tough. So is there a need for workspaces in the suburbs, like co-working spaces? Whereas it might have been WeWork in the city before, and now it's, okay, what's the equivalent, but in the suburbs for smaller teams? So just really thinking through, are there opportunities that we might be missing? And thinking about, should we pivot towards those opportunities at this point? But it very much depends on the business. Companies like Uni, the pizza oven company in Edinburgh, they're absolutely thriving right now. People are cooking outside. It's perfect. Going into winter, are we all going to be buying fire pits and overhead heaters so that we can continue to have socially distance social life outside in the freezing cold? Thinking through what's coming next. Little swimming pools and paddling pools for your backyard sold out early. They were sold out by the end of March. What's the next step going into winter and going into next year? I think that would be my advice. The other thing to think about is this will pass. It's hard and unpleasant, but it's not forever. We've lived, I've lived through the dot-com bubble. We've lived through the 2008 recession, and it sucks at the time. But if you are disciplined and resilient, you'll build a really healthy business when the set is over.
That's pretty inspiring, actually. I think I'm going to go and buy the church hall in Aberfeldy now as a drop-in centre for businesses. You just changed the whole investment view in one sentence. I think you're right. I think but things have changed. I think what you're talking about there, Lesley, is really powerful. It's thinking about whatever business you're in, what is the pivot given where people are now, and some things will come back, but some things won't.
Yeah.
I just don't believe people are going to be buying 50,000 square feet glass and steel palaces anymore for the office space. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. And according to Claude, Alan Sugar's mate on The Apprentice, he thinks everyone needs to be back in the office. And unless you're at your desk, you're not working.
Oh.
But I don't think anybody else believes that apart from Claude. So, but pretty interesting and inspiring. I think one thing you mentioned there was I'm going to ask you about now, which is every downturn creates lots of new businesses because they just have to do something. You can't do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I think this downturn is going to create even more businesses than usual in a downturn.
Mm-hmm.
What if you were starting a business today? What would you be starting the business doing?
Honestly, I'd be doing what I'm doing. Like, I love what I'm doing, and I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I think, if I had had a crystal ball, maybe I would have produced masks in February. I don't know, PPE equipment,
Yep.
Sell it on the cheap. Don't know. But, I think the important thing is that I want to do something that is having a positive impact on the world. And after my FanDuel days, I came out of that experience. It was an amazing experience, but I came out of the experience realizing, even more so than usual, what's important in life. And it's the relationships with the people around you. And knowing that we're building a product that's having that kind of positive impact. We get these emails in from our users, or messages via our coaches that are just fabulous and inspiring, and we're making a difference to people's lives. And that's what I want to be doing. This is not about let's make a quick buck and flip it and move on. And it was the same with FanDuel. That's never what we were about. It's how do we build a really impactful and inspiring business over the long term. That was my thinking going into Relish a year and a half ago, and that's not changed. And I think coronavirus has sort of girded my mettle and just said, yes, this is definitely the right thing to be focusing on.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody on the call is going to find what you just said, Lesley, hugely inspiring. And you're a great supporter of Scotland and business in Scotland. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change in Scotland? Not in New York, in Scotland. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change?
Apart from the weather? Like that'd
be a good start. But.
That would be number one, for sure. What would I change? I would say, having experienced, we've been in the US for 4 years now. I see youngsters over here who are much more confident than our youngsters in Scotland. And I think, and I saw it when I was hiring at FanDuel as well. You'd interview a candidate who was American versus a candidate who was Scottish, and the American would just come across so much better, so much more confident and sure of themselves. But the Scottish person would have the skill set and be much better at the job. But it's just that, I don't know what it is, but just lack of confidence is the only thing I can put it down to. And I think for me personally, when I was about 100 years ago, when I was younger, I was going for my second job, and I still remember at the end of the interview, it had gone great. I was really qualified for the job. And at the end of the interview, the interviewer said to me, "So do you think you can do this job?" And it was a sales job. And I sat there and I thought to myself, yeah, I really do think I could do this. And I said that. I said, yeah, I think I can. And because I used the word think, it was like, oh, well, you're obviously not confident enough. So helping our youngsters be more confident and be comfortable with taking risks, calculated risks in business, I think would be what I would wish for Scotland.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually completely agree with that, Lesley.
I think there's something, I don't know if parochial is the right word for it, but thinking beyond the borders and thinking beyond even London or England. Like, let's think worldwide here. And how can we expand our thinking beyond just the locality? I hear people back home complaining about the government, and I think, gosh, you've no idea compared to over here. I mean, what I would tell you is the US is incredibly inward looking. Like, there is There's no reason for them to look beyond their own borders. They're so huge. In fact, is there even anything outside of the US? And the way you listen to news over here, you wouldn't think it. But I think in Scotland, we need to see beyond Scotland. And I would encourage anyone who's not lived and worked abroad to do it for a few years. And I've done it before, and I think it just changes your whole perspective on A, what's possible, and B, what you can actually achieve.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think we have to embrace the globe, and in a better way than we do now. I think Scotland's generally pretty bad at showing its wares to the rest of the world, isn't it? Generally.
Yeah, I think we're humble, which is not a terrible thing.
No,
it's
no.
really not. But it can hold you back. Yeah.
So Nicola's going to run for president as an independent.
President of the US.
Is going to run for US president as an independent from Biden and Trump.
I could see her giving them a run.
That could create some discussion tonight, shouldn't it?
Yeah, if she gets in, I might consider staying a bit longer.
Well, if you look at Biden and Trump, I think Nicola would be a good choice, I have to say. Interesting. Where are we on questions, Jude? What's going on in the background?
We have one from Thanos, and actually this is probably for both of you as well. So first to Lesley, has the COVID situation had an impact on the VC landscape in the US, and are VCs less or more willing to invest in tech startups like yours?
Good question.
You can do it as well then for Scotland.
So I think what we saw in March was a wobble where everyone was kind of pencils down, what's happening, let's look at our portfolio companies and see how much we need to bail them out. And then we'll figure out how many new investments we're going to do. So I think that's what was happening in March. But I think now we're back to kind of business as usual. I think VCs are looking for a rich profitability more than usual over here. But they are recognizing that this is a period of opportunity, and companies that are embracing that opportunity, I think, are well placed to raise money. I don't know, Paul, what do you think? Yeah,
I completely agree. I think Scotland, the UK was the same. March, everybody went into looking at triaging their existing portfolios, making sure they're going to survive through the crisis. I actually believe technology is going to lead out the crisis. And although it's unfashionable to say this, some technology companies are doing incredibly well, and I can name some. But it's unfashionable to say you're doing incredibly well at the moment just because of that. But Part Equity's done 21 deals since lockdown. So really not really skipped a beat. I think people should remember, I think that's probably my Amazon delivery. I'm going to keep talking. So I think, excuse me a second.
Oh my goodness.
Moira mustn't be right.
I'm back. That was my diffuser delivery. So there we go. No, so I think people should remember that immediately prior to lockdown, the big PE firms and VC firms had just raised a lot of money, and immediately prior to lockdown, the economy generally globally was in a good position, and most of that money is still sitting there, and it has to be deployed. VCs and private equity firms don't get paid to not deploy money. So I'm actually pretty optimistic. I'm certainly from a power perspective, we've been really busy, and we intend to continue to be really busy. But what Lesley said was true. We went into a bit of kind of navel gazing for a few weeks, working out where the upside was going to be. I think there are some fundamental changes which actually will benefit technology, and therefore if you're investing in technology, you're probably going to do okay. And actually, I think there's going to be a lot of investment appetite around for new starts in the current environment. And I think the downturn will create lots of new starts. So I'm probably more optimistic than most of the doomsayers. And there's always people saying we're going to be in depression for the next 5 years. I think it's very sectoral. I think some sectors will take a long time. I mean, airlines. Who would want to own an airline right now? Mm-hmm. Yep. But if you're in digital, it's likely your future is going to be pretty bright, even in the short to medium term. So I'm an optimist, and I think Lesley is too. And there'll be some challenges, more lockdowns to come, but actually we need to get on with life and move things forward.
I also think that if you are able to build a business in this environment, it will make you be very disciplined, and it will make you build a healthy, tight ship. And whenever there's plentiful VC money, it's harder to build a tight ship, shall we say. And we saw that with, I don't know how much of the history you know behind FanDuel, but the first product that we built before FanDuel was a prediction market called HubDub, and it was launched in January 2008. And so we went into fundraising during the worst recession in years, and we were forced to run a very, very tight, disciplined ship, which for VC funded companies isn't necessarily always the case. So if you're able to do it in this recession, then fair play.
That's interesting, Lesley. You may not even remember this, but HubDub was more or less the first business plan that Park looked at.
Oh, really?
And we had no money at the time, so it was fine. So we didn't invest. Pentech invested, as you know. So, yeah. I was an investor in Pentech Fund 1 with Sandy and Eddie.
Right. Funny. Small world.
It is. Jude, what's next on the question list?
There's one here from Caroline. You're so right about your approach to business. I'm loving hearing about your company. What about any of your future plans for the next few years?
Future plans for the next few years. Do you know what? I always laugh when I'm asked this question, because I'm just one of these people that doesn't have like a long-term 5-year plan. I just don't. Like, I'm gonna make this business as successful as I possibly can. And at the minute, it's like week to week. Like, what are we doing this week? And my approach to building a company has always been come up with a hypothesis, test it, see what the results are, try something different, or implement it and move on, come up with a new hypothesis. And that's exactly how we're building Relish. And as we go into next year, I don't think any of us know what next year is going to look like. To Paul's point earlier, is this a 5-year recession, or are we going to spring back out of the recession by the end of this year? Who knows? And I don't waste too much time thinking about that. We're in a lucky position where we've raised enough cash that gives us a long runway. We're disciplined enough to make sure that we focus on length of runway. And I would say just continuing to focus on the vision and focus on customer outcomes as our kind of key sort of North Star around, does this product do what it says on the tin? And that's the important thing for us.
I think, and great points, Lesley. I think I would add a couple of things to that. One is that there's no point in worrying about something that you can't do anything about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You simply can't do anything about it. All you can do is manage the facts as you see them in front of you right now. I think the definition of risk management has changed completely because COVID impact, nobody expected it. I mean, literally nobody. Every single large company who had whole departments doing risk management got it wrong. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So nobody foresaw this. Yeah. So the way people are thinking about risk, the highly unlikely and probably will never happen scenario could well just happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you think
So
back to the year 2000 and all the risk management around that and all the forward planning around that, Y2K bug, blah, 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 and it was a complete damp squib. And then look at the lack of planning for what we've just been through. Like, why bother?
So there was two questions. Apparently there was a risk management review done of the major clearing banks in about 2 or 3 years ago, set up by the FCA or PRA, sorry, PRA, which purported to analyse the risks around a major pandemic, as in what's just happened. There's two things they missed out of that. The first one was that nobody said that you wouldn't be able to go and work in an office.
Mm.
So all these big, financial services companies had backup sites that if something happened to their site on George Street, they could all move down to a new data center thing in Leith and all carry on working. Nobody ever said to them, what if you can't go into the office? And the second thing nobody ever thought of was what happens if all of the airlines of the world are all grounded all at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't fly anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asked that question either. So that's what I mean by the definition of risk management and what risks are seen to be real and present has changed completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's another question from Whitney, and it said, would Lesley do anything different if she were to start Relish right now compared to what she did in 2018, based on what she's learned over the last 6 months, example, hiring, fundraising and product development?
Well, it would be nice to know the results of your A/B tests without having to run them. That would be great. But no, I mean, we've got a great team. We've got great investors. I think we've raised like $7.2 million. And, I won't say that it was painless, but it could have been a lot worse. I don't think it's ever painless to raise money. No, knowing results of A/B tests in advance, if you could have a crystal ball, that would be my wish.
Yeah. Lesley, when you get a crystal ball, can you send me one as well?
No problem.
Jude?
That's it. We've no other questions unless some more. No, that's it.
Super.
I can't believe that when we've got such an auspicious, successful entrepreneur in front of us tonight that nobody's getting any of the questions. Lesley, it's been great speaking, and I don't know if you've got any final points you want to make, but really thank you for making the time tonight and contributing. And we're all wishing you every success in your venture, obviously. And
great. Thanks for having me.
We'll keep in touch. Anything you want to say, Jude?
No, just don't be a stranger to us in Scotland.
Yeah.
We still like you, and great role model for women in business as well.
I'll be back as soon as I can. Trust me.
Go dog.
Yes.
Much.
Yeah. So thanks for everyone for coming along tonight, for those who've been listening. And Whitney, thanks for all the questions. And Julie, we've had quite a lot of good questions tonight. And Lesley, again, many thanks for spending some time with us this evening. It's great for you to do that. And Jude, as usual, double act. We'll keep it going, I guess.
Great.
And thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.